They're at it again. Senator Elizabeth Warren wants to create an office of drug manufacturer and put the federal government in the business of making drugs for you. Oh, joy. Find out more next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study. Glad you could join me. We're going to find out a bit more about what our Senate is up to. If you want to find out more about the Constitution Study, head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. You can find out all that we're doing. You can follow me on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Find out more about what's going on. In fact, what I really would like you to do is if you like this video, or if you like the audio, or if you have a question, head down, put a comment in, ask your questions in the comment section. Let me know what you think. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover, a question you'd like me to answer, put it in there, and I'll see about including it in one of the upcoming episodes. So today we're going to talk about Senate Bill S3775, a bill to establish, to amend the Public Health Service Act to establish an Office of Drug Manufacturing. Now, I have to tell you, when I first heard this, I was a little bit, you got to be kidding me. Then I found out it was being sponsored by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Really wasn't surprised. Thank you, Massachusetts, for the mess you've given us. Of course, I really can't complain. I lived most of my life in New York, and the senators we've sent are just as bad, if not worse. I don't know. This is. I don't know which is sadder, the fact that this is actually being proposed, or that I'm not surprised it's being proposed based on the quality of senators we've been sending to Washington the last several decades. But here it is, S3775. The purpose of which is the office is to, quote unquote, increase competition, lower prices, and address shortages in the market for prescription drugs, including insulin and I guess I'm assuming in other drugs. Let me ask you this: when have you ever known the federal government to increase competition and lower prices? When have you ever had them decrease shortages and not increase shortages? Ever? Have your health insurance premiums gone down since Obamacare, since the Affordable Care Act? Have they? What makes you think it'll be better if the government gets into drug manufacturing? I mean, Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. How many times are we going to have the government get involved in something they're not supposed to and be surprised when the outcome's not good? We must be nuts. Sorry, as Americans, we must be, because we keep doing this. Let's start out with right off the bat. It's illegal. Right? This bill right here is illegal. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It says any power, not specifically delegated to the federal government, they're forbidden from following. It belongs to the states. Yet there's absolutely nothing, nowhere can you find the authority for the federal government to manufacture anything, to get into business in the first place. Excuse me. So the simple fact that Senator Warren had the chutzpah to propose such a bill is one thing. The fact that 99 other senators didn't simply look at the title of the bill and say, "Are you nuts? What are you smoking?" really disturbs me, because that means that there are at least 100 senators that have no clue what the Constitution says. And there's probably better part of 435 congressmen, members of the House, that are just as ignorant. So, okay, the federal government is going to get involved in the manufacture of drugs, and their role is to lower prices. Doesn't work. It's never happened. They want to increase competition. How are they going to increase competition when they're the ones that set the rules. I mean, it's insane to me. They also say they're going to reduce the cost of prescription drugs to federal state health programs, taxpayers, and consumers. Well, you see, that probably will happen. That part will actually happen, because what they're going to do is transfer those costs to the American taxpayer. They're just going to get subsidized out of the federal tax pools, out of the federal treasury. So that one actually probably could happen. And then also they're going to increase patient access to affordable drugs. Well, again, I love these terms they keep throwing out. They're going to, affordable. Well, affordable to who? Affordable, someone who's making $500,000 a year, or someone's making $50,000 a year. You see, one, it's unconstitutional. We should be over and done with this right off the bat. But let's take it a step farther. Let's see what else is involved. Even by today's twisted reading of the Constitution, there's no way this should pass muster. But let's actually look at what they want to do. All right, so they want to establish this office because they want to sell drugs at a fair price. You know what the one thing they don't do? They don't tell you what fair means. They don't define it. So let's define fair. Fair means equitable. Okay, fair means equitable. What does that mean? It means equal in regard to the right of persons. It means impartial. Now let me ask you this. You have a federal government that makes the rules and manufactures the drug. Does that sound impartial? This is going to air right about the time of the Super Bowl. And everybody likes picking on the New England Patriots, and this mess came out of Massachusetts. So, hey, let's pick on the Patriots. Let's say the Patriots decide they don't like the way the games have been officiated. So they hire their own officiating crew, and they require that all their games be officiated by their crew. Do you think that's going to be impartial? Not on your life. There's a reason why the officials work for the NFL, not for the teams, so they're impartial. So if it's not impartial, it's not equitable. And if it's not equitable, it's not fair. How do you end up with a fair price with an unfair system? This, by definition, is an unfair system. And what do you think Congress is going to do? First of all, how much do you think Congress actually knows about the cost of manufacturing drugs? Do they realize that most of the cost of manufacturing these drugs, most of the cost that involves the prices of these drugs, comes from the regulations that they have created, either directly or by passing it off to the executive branch? You see, most of the cost of the drugs that you pay for today is not the stuff in the drugs. It's not the stuff in the capsule. It's not the stuff in the pit tablet or in the IV. It's the regulations that the drug companies have to go through to get these approved. It costs $1 billion, billion with a B, to take a drug from idea to on your shelf. And they've got to recoup that somewhere, or they can't make any more new drugs. But you see, Congress doesn't think that way, because Congress is populated with politicians, most of which probably haven't had to work really work a day in their life. They haven't had to run a business. They haven't had to deal with payroll. They haven't had to do a cost-benefit analysis. They're just politicians. This is all political stunt. So now we have the federal government determining the rules, and of course they're never going to twist the rules to make it more advantageous for their drug manufacturers. And then guess what happens when this federal drug company starts selling drugs at what the politicians think is a fair price, and then realize they can't they can't offset their costs. They're losing money. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to do exactly the same thing that the U.S. Postal Service does and that Amtrak does. They're going to go to Congress, hat in hand, saying, we need money. Where do you think that money's coming from? That's right. Your pocket, my pocket, our pockets. This is not, I repeat, not going to end up with better drugs, cheaper prices. What it's going to do is simply transfer the costs of drugs from the consumer to the taxpayer, which is what this is really all about. It's turning into a socialized medicine. It is the federal government taking over another part of the U.S. economy, because people like Elizabeth Warren apparently think America is evil. Based on what they've said, that's what we keep hearing. So let's see. In general, the office shall manufacture or enter into contracts with entities to manufacture an active pharmaceutical ingredient if. Yes, if you thought this was about regulation, no. This is about manufacturing. This is about the federal government either manufacturing or contract with someone to manufacture a drug under these conditions. If the office determines that such ingredient is not readily available from existing suppliers. Have they bothered to ask why they're not available from existing suppliers? Have they bothered to say, gee, I wonder why it's not being manufactured? Do you really think that Pfizer or Bristol Myers Squibb don't make drugs because they're mean? They don't manufacture them either because it's too expensive or because there's not enough market to offset the cost. Most of the costs have been created either directly or indirectly through the very same Congress that's trying to take over drug manufacturing. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that these people are serious, this would make a Saturday Night Live skit. And this is the nonsense we're going to be stuck with. So they're also going to manufacture drugs. If the manufacture of such ingredient would improve the ability of other entities to enter the market for the manufacture of generic drugs or otherwise expand the manufacture of generic drugs. Do you know why it takes so long for a generic drug to come on the market? It's real simple. You see, the drug companies went to Congress and said, hey, it takes so much money for us to recoup the costs you've created to make these drugs and bring them to market. We need time to recoup that cost. So what we need you to do is we need you to extend our patent so that we don't have competition for longer so we can recoup the cost that you've made us pay to get these drugs. And that's not how they word it, but that's effectively what they say. In other words, the generic drugs aren't on the market because Congress protects the drug companies. Because Congress has made the drug companies pay all this extra money, and what they say is to keep us safe. No, it's control. See, they're not really worried about keeping us safe. Otherwise, when the FDA released a bad drug, heads of the FDA would roll. But that's not what happens. See, there is no accountability. So this idea that they're going to improve access to generic drugs, that's a fallacy. It's a red herring. There's no way they can do it because generic drugs cannot be made as long as a patent is in place, and that patent is established by federal law under the Constitution. It's actually one of the things the Constitution allows Congress to do is establish intellectual property protections, i.e. patents and copyrights. Let's see. Number 3, the manufacture of such ingredient is necessary for the office to carry out its duty. So now the manufacture of drugs is not going to be a function of business, but of political will. See, what's going to happen is some poor grandmother is going to go to their congressman, some poor group is going to say, we need this drug, and the big bad drug companies won't make it, and the congressman will huff and puff on the floor and how terrible, this is awful, and the drug manufacturing office must make this drug. See, now it's not being made on decisions of financial or economic or even the market, but political. We're going to have prices established by political motive. We're going to have what's made and how much is made established by political motive. Does anybody see a problem here? Does anybody foresee an issue when what drugs get manufactured is influenced heavily by the federal government? Directly? Not indirectly through regulations, but them actually manufacturing drugs? You think Affordable Care Act is a mess. What happens when your drugs are controlled by the federal government? In general, the Secretary shall sell a drug produced under this section at a fair price to other entities. Amounts received from the sale of such drugs shall be used for the activities of the office. Now that may sound good, right? Okay, this will be a self-funding system. Although we know it's not, because the first thing they say is they're going to sell drugs at a fair price. But we already know it's not fair because the federal government is meddling in the market. They are the referee and the game player and the player. They're the ump and the batsman. it's an unfair advantage right off the bat. They're using political means to determine price, political means to determine what's manufactured, political means to determine how much is being manufactured. Then, once they do sell these drugs, they're going to use that to fund the office, which means the office will have an income stream that is not under the control of Congress. Now stop and think about this for a minute. Elizabeth Warren, who apparently so hates Donald Trump, she must hate him when he wakes up in the morning based on some of the stuff I've seen. She hates President Trump, but she wants to give an executive agency, which the Office of Drug Manufacturer will be, she wants to give an executive agency a funding stream outside of the control of Congress. Does that make any rational sense to you whatsoever? You're going to take a branch of the government that may or may not be run by someone you despise, and you're going to give them more power, you're going to give them more money, and they're going to take it outside of your control? This is nuts. This is stupid. This is going to destroy the drug market. This is going to destroy not only the market, but think about this. If you run a drug manufacturing company, and now you have this unfair competition because the federal government creates all the rules, has taxpayer subsidies, they can sell drugs cheaper than you can. Where are you going to get the money to develop the new drug and get it to market? Where are you going to get the $1 billion it takes to bring a new drug to market when you have to compete with somebody that doesn't have to follow the same regulations or is in control of the regulations, can manipulate them to their own benefit? That's what this is talking about. There's a reason why the federal government is forbidden from getting into business, because it makes a mess. It is distorting to the market, and everybody that sits there and whines and complains and rails against capitalism, that's the problem. It's not capitalism. This is socialism. This is the federal government getting into the way, deciding it's going to be in control of a specific market. I foresee nothing good coming out of this, because guess what happens next, right? Authorization of appropriations. That's right. They are authorized to be appropriated such sums as may be necessary to carry out this section. That means you are on the hook for whatever it costs to get this office up and running, to pay for its shortfalls, anything that's necessary to do this. Anything. Now, we saw what happened to healthcare, to health insurance premiums when the government got involved in that. What do you think is going to happen when it gets involved in manufacturing drugs? What happens when the federal government effectively takes over the drug market? As I've already said, who's going to make the new wonder drug? How? How are they going to make the new wonder drug? Because the federal government's going to be siphoning off all the money they need to develop and bring to market these new drugs. They're going to manipulate the drug companies out of the market. What happens when you go to get your drugs, you basically have to deal with the DMV. Imagine, remember the last time you had to go to DMV. Now imagine you have to do that every time you need whatever drugs you need, to your blood pressure medication, your angina medication, your insulin, all right, whatever drugs you need. Imagine when you have to go through a process like the DMV to get your drugs. What's life going to be like? We've heard stories about the VA. What's it going to be like when getting your drugs is like going to the VA? What? I mean, I can't be the only person that's thinking this. I can't be the only person that looks at this mess and said, there's a reason why the federal government's not allowed to do this. Why aren't people standing up? I mean, the chutzpah of Elizabeth Warren to even put such a pile of excrement on the record is astonishing. The fact that of the 535 members of Congress between the House and the Senate, I've heard nobody come up and lambast and say, What are you smoking? We can't do this. This is illegal. This is unconstitutional. Even thinking about this is a waste of time. But the fact that the American people aren't standing up and going, Massachusetts, what is wrong with you? If this is what you're going to send us, we don't want you as part of the union. You're dangerous. No more. This is the type of stuff. And if you think it's going to stop here, it didn't stop with the ACA. It's not going to stop here. It's not going to stop until we stop letting these bozos think they can do whatever they please, regardless of what the Constitution says. We know so little about the Constitution. We see an article that says, oh yeah, guess what? The feds are going to take care of the drug market. And we go, ooh, goody. Rather than going, really? I mean, to me, that should be a Minuteman call. They're after us. We should be up in arms, but we're not. It makes you wonder, have we already succumbed to a tyrannical government? Have we been so trained, so indoctrinated that the federal government can do whatever it wants to do that we don't even question stuff like this? We don't question the appropriateness, the legality, the constitutionality, that we have no clue of what we should be doing here? I mean, are we really that far down the road to tyranny that this does not set off red flags? I don't know. I know when I heard about this, like I said, it got my dander up. It really got me going. It really makes me weep for the state of my nation when I see how the people react, or more accurately, don't react to something like this. So I hope this got your dander up. I hope this got to show you really just how insidious what's coming out of what's being proposed in Washington is. I hope you'll contact your senator, you'll contact your congressman, you'll let them know that this is not constitutional. Supporting this is a violation of their oath of office, reason for them to be removed. And I hope you'll keep your eyes out and be aware of things like this that come down. If you find something like this and you want me to go over it, please, again, put it in the comment section. Let me know what you think. I'd be more than happy to answer questions, and I hope to see you again the next time on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday America.